How did my dad lose his custody rights? My dad's first holiday with full custody nearly became my last. I was reaching for the sweet potatoes when the pain hit, like someone was driving a blade into my lower right side. Dad, I whispered, clutching the table. My stomach really hurts. Not now, Emma, he said, barely glancing my way. We're about to do the family toast. This was our first Thanksgiving at Grandma Eleanor's house in 4 years. The first one since Dad won partial custody. The first one without Mom. I want to make a toast. Grandma Eleanor began, raising her wine glass, to having our family reunited, free from certain toxic influences. Everyone knew she meant Mom. The pain sharpened, a hot spike radiating through me. I pressed my hand against my side, feeling heat through my sweater. Dad, I tried again. I think something's really wrong. Emma's trying to ruin dinner, my cousin Liam announced, just like last time. Last time, when I was 9 and threw up at Christmas because Mom had just told me about the divorce, they still held it against me for causing a scene. I'm not trying to, I said, a wave of nausea hitting so hard I doubled over. Oh, here we go, Aunt Clara sighed. Eleanor, didn't I tell you? The mother probably coached her to do this. My mom's not even here, I protested, instantly regretting raising my voice as another stab of pain shot through me. Watch your tone, Dad warned. Your mother's not here because she lost that privilege, and you're not going to manipulate your way out of family time. I stood, planning to head to the bathroom, but the room tilted. I grabbed the chair to steady myself. Sit. Down, Grandma Eleanor's voice was cold as steel. We do not leave the table during the family toast. It's disrespectful. I think I'm going to throw up. Of course you are, Uncle Thomas laughed. Just like your mother. Always so dramatic. Always the victim. My 11-year-old sister Nora looked at me with worried eyes from across the table. She'd been quiet since we arrived, intimidated by Dad's family. Please, I whispered, I need to lie down. You need to show respect, Dad said firmly. This is the first holiday we've had without your mother's interference. You're not ruining it. The pain spread, a fire across my abdomen. Sweat dripped down my back. Maybe she really is sick, my cousin Sadie said softly. Don't you start, her mother snapped. She's fine. Just wants attention because Mommy's not here to coddle her. I tried to sit, but my legs gave out. The chair scraped loudly against the floor as I stumbled, missing it. Emma Grace. Dad stood. That's enough. Dad, please. Tears streamed down my face. It hurt so bad. You know what hurts? Grandma Eleanor stood too, watching my son deal with your behavior. Seeing what that woman turned you into, Nora suddenly pushed back her chair. She's not faking, she screamed. Look at her. She's pale. Nora, sit down, Dad ordered. No, she was sobbing now. Mom said if we ever needed help to call 911. She said you wouldn't listen. She said, Aunt Clara cut in. Your mother said a lot of things, most of them lies. The room spun. I dropped to my knees, clutching my side. It felt like my insides were burning. She's being ridiculous, Uncle Thomas said. In my day, kids didn't pull these stunts. It's not a stunt. Nora was hysterical. Please, someone help her. I'm calling her mother, Aunt Clara announced. Through my tears, I saw Nora crawling under the table toward the kitchen. Smart girl, there was a landline there. Where do you think you're going? Grandma Eleanor grabbed Nora's ankle. Let go of her! I tried to yell, but it came out as a whisper. Then I threw up all over Grandma Eleanor's antique rug. My rug! She shrieked. Do you see? Do you see what these children are? Just like their mother, someone muttered. The pain was unbearable now. I curled into a ball on the floor, shaking. Get up, Dad said coldly. You're embarrassing me. I can't. Everything darkened at the edges. Nora bit Grandma Eleanor's hand and bolted for the kitchen. That wild animal bit me, Eleanor screamed. Someone stop her, Dad shouted. But Nora was already dialing. I could hear her screaming our address into the phone. Hang up that phone, Dad roared. No, Nora sobbed. You're letting her die, just like Mom said you would. What did that woman tell you? Grandma Eleanor demanded. But then I started convulsing, real, violent shaking I couldn't control. Oh my gosh, someone whispered. "She's having a seizure," Sadie said, her voice trembling. "That's not fake." Finally, Dad's voice cracked. "Call 911 now." The last thing I remember was Nora's small hand in mine, whispering, "I'm sorry, Emma." "I'm so sorry." Mom said to be brave. She said she loves us. Then everything went black. I woke up after emergency surgery. My appendix had burst. The doctor said another hour and I might not have made it. The infection was already spreading. Dad couldn't look at me. He just kept muttering, "I didn't know," over and over. But Nora knew. Mom knew. And we were going to destroy him. The machines beside my bed beeped steadily as I watched Dad pace by the window in the hospital room in Willow Creek Medical Center. His boots squeaked on the linoleum with each turn. He repeated those 3 words, "I didn't know," quietly, like a mantra. Nora's hand was warm and small in mine, and she leaned close, her breath smelling of the spearmint gum the nurse gave her, to whisper that she'd called Mom from the nurse's station. Dad's face looked ashen under the fluorescent lights, his jacket stained with my blood from where I'd grabbed him. The 4th in my arm tugged when I tried to sit up, sending a sharp sting through my wrist. Nora helped adjust the pillow behind me, her movements careful, like she thought I might shatter. The door opened, and a woman in green scrubs entered with a chart. She glanced at Dad, then at me, and began explaining what had happened inside my body. My appendix had ruptured, spilling poison through my abdomen when they operated. She pointed to areas on my stomach where they'd cleaned out the infection. "If we'd waited another hour," she said, looking at Dad, "she likely wouldn't be here." Dad's knees buckled, and he gripped the windowsill to stay upright. Nora squeezed my hand tighter, her body trembling. The surgeon kept talking about antibiotics and recovery time while Dad stared at the floor. She scribbled on her chart, noting she'd already informed the ER staff about the delay in treatment. Dad's head jerked up at that, but he stayed silent. The surgeon left, and the room fell quiet except for the beeping machines. Around 1 a.m., I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. Mom burst in, her hair wild, her scarf trailing off one shoulder. Dad backed toward the door, but Mom didn't even look at him. She pulled Nora and me into her arms, holding us so tightly I could barely breathe. Her tears soaked into my hospital gown as she kissed my forehead repeatedly. Nora sobbed into Mom's shoulder, and my own tears came again. Mom held us for what felt like an eternity, rocking us gently like when we were little. Dad slipped into the hallway without a word. The next morning, a woman with short silver hair and a badge knocked on the door. She introduced herself as Karen Holt from Child Protective Services in Willow Creek, explaining the hospital had contacted them. Mom sat up straighter in the chair she'd slept in all night. Karen said the ER staff had documented that multiple adults prevented me from getting help for a life-threatening condition. She carried a folder and began asking Mom about custody arrangements. Dad and Grandma Eleanor arrived while Karen was there, and Eleanor immediately started talking loudly. She told Karen that Mom must have coached me to fake being sick to ruin their family dinner. Dad nodded, saying I'd always been dramatic, and Mom encouraged it. Karen looked at them, then opened her folder and showed them the medical report confirming my appendix had burst, and I nearly died from infection. Eleanor's mouth moved silently for a moment. Karen said she'd reviewed all the medical records and understood the gravity of the situation. She turned to me and asked if I felt okay to talk about what happened. My head was fuzzy from the pain meds dripping through my IV. I glanced at Nora, who nodded, so I nodded to Karen. Mom said she'd take Nora to the cafeteria for breakfast to give us privacy. Eleanor tried to insist she should stay, but Karen said family interviews were private. Once they left, Karen pulled her chair close to my bed and told me to take my time. I started from when the pain hit during dinner and recounted everything, how I begged Dad for help, and he said I was ruining the meal, how Aunt Clara called me dramatic and Uncle Thomas laughed, how they wouldn't let me leave the table or go to the bathroom. I described throwing up on the rug and Dad saying I was embarrassing him. I told her how Eleanor grabbed Nora's ankle to stop her from calling for help. Karen wrote it all in a notebook, occasionally asking me to repeat details for accuracy. She asked how long I'd been pleading for help before 911 was called. I tried to recall, but the end was blurry. She said that was okay and praised my bravery. When we finished, she brought Nora back for her turn. Nora showed Karen her phone's call history, pinpointing the exact time she dialed 911. She explained crawling under the table and Eleanor trying to stop her. The timing feels odd, doesn't it? My appendix bursts right during the one holiday Dad has custody. I'm curious what made Nora so ready with that 911 plan. Like Mom prepped her for this exact emergency, knowing Dad wouldn't take medical issues seriously. Nora's voice grew louder as she described biting Eleanor's hand to break free. She said Eleanor called her a feral child and Dad yelled at her to hang up. Karen photographed the call log with her phone. She asked Nora if anyone helped her, and Nora said no, everyone either watched or tried to stop her. 2 days later, the doctor said I could go home soon, but a fight broke out over where home was. Dad insisted his custody agreement meant I had to go with him, but Mom refused. Karen returned and explained a temporary safety plan. Nora and I would stay with Mom until a judge could hold a hearing about the incident. Dad's face reddened, and he shouted about his parental rights, accusing Mom of turning us against him and orchestrating everything. Karen stayed calm, saying the safety plan was already approved based on medical evidence. Dad slammed his fist on the wall, demanding to take us immediately. Mom stepped between us and my bed. A security guard appeared after the nurses called, alarmed by the yelling. Dad pointed at Mom, claiming she was kidnapping his kids. The guard looked at Karen, who showed him paperwork and explained the situation. Dad kept shouting that we belonged with him and Mom had no right to keep us. The guard told him to calm down or leave. Dad refused, saying he wouldn't go without his children. The guard radioed for backup, and another guard arrived. They documented everything Dad said in their report. Karen later told me it was all recorded as evidence. Dad finally stormed out when the guard threatened to call the police, yelling about his rights and how Mom would pay. The next few days in the hospital were brutal, not just the pain, but the helplessness. I couldn't stand without assistance. The nurse held my arm to get me to the bathroom, and even that short walk left me trembling and sweating. My stomach muscles were useless post-surgery, and sitting up felt like being torn open again. Nora stayed every day, curled in the visitor's chair doing homework on Mom's laptop. Mom had set up virtual school for her because Nora refused to leave, terrified something would happen to me if she wasn't there. The physical therapist came twice daily to help me walk the hallway, and I hated how weak I felt, barely managing 20 feet before collapsing into a chair. Mom spent most of her time on the phone in the hall, talking to someone named Rachel Cohen, the best custody lawyer in Oregon, about emergency hearings, medical evidence, and an ex parte order. When Mom returned, she explained Rachel was filing to change the custody arrangement based on Thanksgiving. The hospital discharged me after a week, and Mom drove us to her small 2-bedroom apartment in Portland. Nothing like Dad's sprawling house in Salem, but it felt safer than anywhere I'd been in months. She'd set up the living room for my recovery, a wedge pillow on the couch, my medications lined up on the coffee table with a typed schedule. Nora and I shared the smaller bedroom, and she didn't complain, just helped Mom move her stuffed animals to make space for my things. I started writing everything in a notebook. Mom bought me every detail from Thanksgiving, and other times Dad ignored our illnesses or injuries. Like when I had severe stomach pain 4 months ago, and he called me overdramatic, refusing urgent care. Or when Nora sprained her ankle and he just gave her an ice pack instead of seeing a doctor. Writing it down made it real, giving me hope someone would listen this time. Nora's teacher called to check on her, and Mom arranged a video call with the school counselor, Mia Torres, to ensure Nora was coping. During the call, I overheard Nora telling Mia how scared she was that night, thinking I'd die. Mia called Nora brave and promised to help her process it. About 2 weeks after moving to Mom's, we got a letter saying the court appointed a guardian ad litem, Victor Marshall, to represent Nora's and my best interests. Dad's family immediately texted Mom, claiming Victor was biased against them and this was a setup. Mom saved the texts and sent them to Rachel. Nora was checking her old phone when she found texts from Dad bad-mouthing Mom, calling her unstable and telling us not to trust her. She took screenshots, especially of ones where he insulted Mom and tried to convince us she didn't care. She asked if we should show them to Victor, and I said absolutely. My first meeting with Victor was 3 weeks post-surgery, and I was still moving slowly. He came to Mom's apartment, an older man with a calm voice and gray hair. He sat across from me in the living room and asked me to recount Thanksgiving. I lifted my shirt to show the surgical scar stretching across my lower stomach. I walked him through every moment, the pain starting, passing out on Eleanor's floor, everything in between. He wrote on a yellow legal pad, never interrupting. When I finished, he said, What happened was inexcusable. No child should have to beg for medical help. Nora met him next, showing her phone's call log with the 911 call timestamped at 7:49 p.m. She shared the screenshots of Dad's texts and described Eleanor grabbing her ankle, calling her a feral child. Victor told her she was incredibly brave and that her quick thinking saved my life, which made her cry, but in a good way. That week, my phone lit up with messages from a group chat Dad's family created. They called us liars, saying Mom brainwashed us. Aunt Clara wrote, "We were ungrateful brats who didn't appreciate Dad's efforts." Uncle Thomas said, "Kids today lack respect and need discipline, not pampering." But Sadie, who'd said I looked sick at dinner, sent me screenshots of the adult family chat where they planned to align their stories about Thanksgiving. Mia met with Nora the next day at school, creating a safety plan ensuring only Mom or approved people could pick her up. The office got a copy, and Mia explained the custody situation, warning that Eleanor might try something. Nora came home looking more relaxed, knowing Eleanor couldn't just take her. 3 days later, we had our first supervised visitation with Dad at a drab government building in downtown Portland. The supervisor, an older woman named Ellen, sat in the corner with a clipboard while Dad tried to act normal in a playroom with toys too young for Nora, 11, or me, 15. Dad kept mentioning Mom, asking if she told us what to say to the social worker, if she coached us about Thanksgiving, if she was filling our heads with lies. Ellen cleared her throat when he got pushy, but then her phone rang and she stepped into the hall for just a minute. The second she left, Dad grabbed my wrist, not painfully, but firmly enough I couldn't pull away. "Your mother put you up to this, didn't she?" I slipped my phone out with my free hand, hit record discreetly, and kept it on my lap. "She's been planning this for years, waiting to turn you against me." He ranted about Mom's manipulation, how she'd poisoned us against his family, how we were ruining everything he'd built. Ellen returned after 3 minutes, and Dad released my wrist, switching to small talk about school. Nora, who'd been in the bathroom, whispered as we left that she'd heard Eleanor's voice in the lobby. Eleanor had been outside the bathroom door before we arrived, telling Dad to say Mom was unstable, had a history of false accusations, and couldn't provide for us financially. Nora had stood on the toilet seat to eavesdrop through the vent, memorizing every word. We told Mom when she picked us up, and she called Rachel, who said to document it with the exact time and date. 2 weeks later, I had a follow-up with the surgeon who saved me. She examined my scar, still raw and red across my stomach, pulling when I moved too quickly. She asked me to recount Thanksgiving and how long I'd been in pain before help arrived. She spent 20 minutes typing a detailed letter about my condition's severity, using terms like peritonitis and negligent delay. Emma's recovery journal is like a masterclass in evidence collection. She knows documentation trumps denial, especially with Dad's family texts incriminating themselves. The letter noted the delay nearly killed me, and infection had spread by the time I reached surgery. She printed 3 copies, one for me, one for my records, one for the court if needed. Rachel called that afternoon, saying the surgeon's letter was critical medical evidence. The next morning, Karen visited Mom's apartment for a home inspection. Mom had cleaned for 2 days, though the place was already spotless. Karen checked each room with a list, photographing Nora's homework corner in the living room, with school supplies in neat bins. She snapped the medication schedule on the fridge, showing my antibiotics and pain meds with check marks for each dose. She inspected the kitchen cabinets, stocked with food, confirmed we had clean beds, and checked the bathroom for toiletries and first aid supplies. She spent extra time in our room, where Mom had hung our artwork and photos, making it feel like home, despite our short time there. Karen noted everything was stable and appropriate and praised Mom's organization under pressure. That night, my phone buzzed with a long text from Aunt Clara. She apologized for Thanksgiving getting out of hand, but said I was tearing the family apart with my accusations. She claimed Dad was devastated. Eleanor was having chest pains from stress and family should stick together. She urged me to stop Nora's nonsense before it went too far. I screenshotted it and sent it to Victor without replying, as Rachel had advised. 3 days later, Mom got a call from Nora's school. Eleanor had tried to pick her up, claiming emergency custody papers. A lie. The staff followed the safety plan, refusing her access. Eleanor yelled about her grandmotherly rights, but the principal called the police while the secretary stalled her with fake paperwork. The officers made Eleanor leave and filed a report for attempting to violate the custody agreement, which the school sent to Mia, Karen, and Rachel. A week later, while grocery shopping with Mom, I passed the deli section and smelled gravy heating. My body froze. Suddenly, I was back on Eleanor's floor, curled up in agony while everyone called me dramatic. My chest tightened, my breathing shallow, my hands shaking. Mom noticed, abandoned the cart, and got me to a bench outside. She helped me breathe slowly, counting until my heart slowed. That afternoon, she found a therapist named Lila, who specialized in medical trauma, and booked me an appointment. Days before my first therapy session, Nora devised a plan to sneak into Dad's house in Salem when he was at work, and check Eleanor's unlocked phone, always charging in the kitchen, for texts about us or Thanksgiving. I shut it down, saying it was too risky and possibly illegal. Nora was upset, insisting we needed more proof, but I explained we had enough evidence and breaking in could hurt Mom's case. We agreed to trust the legal process. After my first session with Lila, where I recounted Thanksgiving, I met with Victor and Rachel at her office. I played the recording from the supervised visit, where Dad accused Mom of coaching us. The audio was slightly muffled but clear enough to hear him say, "Mom had poisoned us and planned this for years." Rachel took notes, and Victor asked why I recorded it. I explained Mom taught us to document everything with Dad's family because they'd lie. They said the recording showed Dad's pattern of manipulation and blame shifting. The next day, Mia worked with Nora at school, helping her write down her Thanksgiving account in a quiet room with colored pens. Nora wrote slowly, her tongue out as she focused, describing her fear when I collapsed and how she bit Eleanor to reach the phone. Mia recorded Nora reading it aloud for practice. Meanwhile, Rachel had me visit her office 3 times that week to review every Thanksgiving detail on a whiteboard timeline. I got angry recounting Uncle Thomas's laughter or Eleanor's rug obsession while I was dying. Rachel paused me, teaching me to breathe and count to 10 to stay calm for the deposition. We practiced with her assistant, playing Dad's lawyer, asking trick questions. By the 3rd session, I could tell the story without shaking. One afternoon, Nora found a family tracker app on her phone installed with Dad's Apple ID, tracking her location and messages 24/7. She showed Mom, who called Rachel. Their IT guy confirmed it, took screenshots, and wiped Nora's phone, setting up a new ID. Nora was quiet for hours, shaken by Dad's surveillance. 2 weeks later, we attended our first hearing in a small wood-paneled courtroom in Portland. Dad sat with his lawyer. We sat with Rachel. Victor stood in the middle, representing us. The judge reviewed reports from Karen, the hospital, and Victor. Dad's lawyer called it a misunderstanding, but the judge silenced him. She ordered supervised visitation only, twice monthly for 2 hours, and required Dad to take parenting classes before any changes. Eleanor was barred from visits and school grounds. Dad's face reddened, but his lawyer restrained him. That night, Sadie texted Nora screenshots from the family chat, calling us liars and brats. Clara wrote we were manipulative like Mom. Thomas said we needed discipline. Eleanor wrote a long message about us destroying the family. Dad liked every message. Nora cried, and I wanted to smash my phone. Mom told us to save everything for Rachel. Days later, Rachel found insurance records from 4 months before Thanksgiving. Dad had called the nurse line about my severe stomach pain, and they urged urgent care. He declined. Rachel said this proved a pattern of medical neglect, adding it to our evidence. Nora and Mom visited Eleanor's church in Salem for custody-related documents. While Mom spoke to the secretary, Nora overheard 2 women whispering in the hall. One said Eleanor was too harsh on us. Another mentioned my Christmas incident at 9, noting the family's cruelty. A man passing by said his daughter, a hospital worker, heard about Thanksgiving. Recording that supervised visit was smart. Did Emma know something would happen? Or was it just instinct to document this family? Nora realized not everyone bought Eleanor's perfect family story. My sessions with Lila were tough. Talking about lying on Eleanor's floor triggered panic tight chest, shallow breathing. Lila taught me a grounding technique. Name 5 things I see, 4 I hear, 3 I touch, 2 I smell, 1 I taste. It brought me back to her office. We worked through the story in pieces, pausing when needed. After a few sessions, I could recount it without panicking. Sharing a room with Nora at Mom's helped her. She'd wake up nightly, checking my breathing, whispering my name to ensure I was okay. Mom got her a star-projecting nightlight, and we read together at bedtime. Her nightmares lessened, and she knew she could wake Mom or me if needed. Dad's lawyer filed papers claiming Mom alienated us, including old photos of us smiling at the aquarium and picnics pre-divorce, arguing we were happy with him. He said Mom coached us to lie about Thanksgiving for child support. Rachel called it a common tactic, saying the medical evidence my burst appendix was undeniable. 2 weeks before the trial, Victor interviewed my teachers and the school nurse at Willow Creek High, who'd seen me doubled over from stomach pain twice that semester when Dad didn't refill my acid reflux meds. They signed statements, and the principal provided security footage of me struggling to walk post-Thanksgiving. Mia showed Victor notes on Nora's anxiety and eyelash pulling. His evidence folder grew thicker. A detective, Elena Voss, visited Mom's apartment with a recorder, asking me to detail Thanksgiving minute by minute. Mom held my hand as I described who said what, how long I was on the floor, and Eleanor stopping Nora. Elena underlined Eleanor's ankle grabbing twice, noting the hospital's mandatory report would aid the custody case, though criminal charges were unlikely. Nora received a letter from Eleanor at school, written in her neat cursive, expressing disappointment for biting her and calling 911, saying good girls don't betray their grandmothers, and demanding an apology. Nora read it, folded it, and gave it to Mom for Victor, unfazed. At our first supervised visit with Dad in the same drab Portland building, Supervisor Janet explained the rules. Dad arrived late, looking exhausted. We played Uno, and I asked why he didn't believe my pain. He stared at his cards, then said he thought I was dramatic like Mom, who taught me to manipulate for attention. Janet wrote it down. At the next visit, Dad favored Nora, giving her candy and calling her sweetie, while muttering I was clumsy when I dropped a card. Nora started a notebook, logging his comments, calling me weak for post-surgery pain, telling me to toughen up. After 3 visits, it was 3 pages long. Rachel got my full surgical records, showing my appendix began failing at noon on Thanksgiving, hours before I spoke up. The surgeon's report, with photos, highlighted preventable complications and negligent delay. That weekend, Clara approached Nora in the visitation center parking lot, but security intervened, filing another violation report. The judge ordered Dad for a psychological evaluation to assess his parenting fitness, including tests and interviews about Thanksgiving. His lawyer objected, but the judge cited medical evidence and violations. Karen extended the safety plan, keeping us with Mom until the final hearing in 2 months, recommending permanent custody modification based on neglect. Her 15-year career rarely saw such clear documentation, she said. Victor scheduled testimony practice, emphasizing calm, factual delivery. Mia worked with Nora in a mock courtroom at school, using a desk as a witness stand. Nora used a red card to pause, if overwhelmed, improving her answers to tricky questions. 2 weeks before the trial, my surgical site became hot and swollen. Mom rushed me to urgent care. Nora cried, fearing I'd die again. The doctor treated a minor infection, noting it was common post-surgery. Mom photographed it, and the doctor wrote a note for our records. Rachel added it as evidence of ongoing complications.